this video I shall be demonstrating manual targeting using the navigation chart and TDC. First, however, we'll go to the periscope and we'll raise the periscope and look for a suitable target. Put the periscope just above the surface of the waves. We zoom in, pan about. And there is a convoy here, as well as various escorts. We then press F5 to go to the navigation chart, zoom in slightly, and using the pencil tool we mark the position of lead ships in each column, ignoring the escorts, and at least one ship towards the back of the convoy. As soon as we have marked the positions of the ships, we use Control Page Down to pull down the periscope screen, and we go to the periscope screen and start the stopwatch by clicking on it. The object of this exercise is not to eliminate the use of the periscope, but to avoid the amount of time that the periscope spends above the water. The more time that the periscope is up, the more chance you have of having it spotted by enemy escorts, and therefore the greater your chance of being sunk is. What we're going to do is we're now going to wait for 3 minutes and 15 seconds. The distance in kilometers that a ship travels in 3 minutes and 15 seconds, when multiplied by 10, is the speed of the ship in knots. That will allow us to measure the speed of the ship, and this is one of the pieces of information that we need for manual targeting. However, while we're waiting for that 3 minutes and 15 seconds to elapse, we'll go to the navigation chart, and using the ruler we will draw a line through the pencil marks that we made earlier. We start by making a line that goes through the two marks where we have two separate marks in a single column, and then we mark the positions of the other columns by making lines that are parallel to that first line. The other thing that we do while we are waiting for the 3 minutes and 15 seconds to elapse is go to the TDC screen, which is F6 on the keyboard. We are going to fire a salvo, so we're going to select the salvo. We're going to set the depth to about 3 meters, torpedo speed to medium, because we have a selection of Type 1 torpedoes here. And we're going to set the trigger to impact. On the navigation chart we can measure the distance out to the convoy, and you can see that's about 3.5 kilometers. And then on the TDC screen we can set the range that we're going to fire to about 3.5 kilometers or so. And then additionally we can then look at what the separation is at the end of the torpedo trace, and we can reduce the spread angle so that the torpedoes are going to be about 50 meters or so apart by the time they reach their destination. Going back to the periscope screen, you can see that we now have about 45 seconds or so to go until we need to make our next measurement. Preparation, we raise the periscope to just below the surface and wait for the final amount of time to elapse. While we're doing that, we can check a few other things. Make sure that our U-boat is on silent running. Press Q on the keyboard to open up all the torpedo tubes. With about 10 seconds to go, we raise the periscope just above the waves, pan about looking for a suitable target. There's one there, looks like a troop transport. Lock onto it, go to the navigation chart, select the pencil tool and mark the position of that ship, and then pull down the periscope with Control Page Down. We then use the ruler to measure the distance between the 2 points that we have measured. And it's between 0.6 and 0.7, so let's say the ship has travelled 0.65, and we multiply that by 10 and that will give us the speed. We go to the TDC and we put in approximately 6.5 knots. We also use the protractor to measure what the angle on bow to that ship is. You can see that's 69 degrees, and that's 69 degrees to port. We also check the range to the ship, and again that can be measured on the navigation chart, and that's 3.4 kilometers. So with the angle on bow, the speed and the range set, we make sure that the TDC is set to automatic again. We go back to the periscope, and one last time we put the periscope up. Find our target and fire. We then pull down the periscope immediately. We set a speed of a couple of knots, turn the U-boat away from the convoy, and set the depth down to 150 meters or so. The idea here is that we start moving out of the general area of the convoy immediately after we have fired our torpedoes, and we do not wait until the torpedoes are well in amongst the escorts and the ships before starting to take any form of evasive maneuvers. By looking at the end of the traces for the salvo that we have fired, provided you have the range set correctly, it will give a time. In this case it's 2 minutes 40 seconds. And if you go to the periscope screen, you'll see that the stopwatch had been started automatically for us, and we'll start counting out the amount of time since the torpedoes were fired. With the U-boat now moving out of the way, we can now regard this particular phase of the attack as being complete, and the only thing that remains to be done in this video is to go to the external camera and have a look at what the progress is of the salvo that we have fired. So here you can see the progress of the salvo. You can see that the torpedoes are spread by about 50 meters apart or so. Obviously, as the torpedoes travel further, that distance will diverge. The reason why we set it to approximately 50 meters is because that way you are less likely to have a glancing hit at just the front or just the back of the ship. What will end up happening is that if you can get one hit, then another torpedo within a reasonable range is likely to have a good hit as well. There is the troop transport. And that you can see that we have slightly overestimated the speed because the center line of the salvo is going to be passing just in front of the ship. However, you can see that even though we've had one glance hit at the front, the next hit has been dead ship. And the target has been destroyed. Curiously, you'll see that another part of the salvo has actually managed to get the second ship, and so this particular attack has resulted in the sinking of 2 ships. By firing at an angle so that the torpedoes will move across the ship at a slightly oblique angle, you'll see that a slight miss slightly ahead or astern of one ship will result in hitting another.